listening to Truth or Dare to Share by Ambitiously Intuitive.
Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of Truth or Dare to Share, where we are talking about the book It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. We are going to give our reactions. Most of us read it. Some of us might be checking some clip notes. In Act 1, giving our reaction. Act 2, asking each other questions. And then Act 3, we play the game Truth or Dare. So let's go ahead and jump in. Michelle, I think I'm going to put you on the spot because when you finished the Audible, you had a pretty intense reaction to the book. So kick us off.
Oh man. Thanks for putting me on the spot, Lacey. I wouldn't expect it any other way. I really enjoyed this book. I chose to listen to it on audio, and this is my first Colleen Hoover book, actually. I really liked the introduction. I'm a fan of audio books. Let me state number one. The voice was really nice in this one. However, the storyline for me was just, I don't know why, but it was triggering. I cried, happy tears, sad tears. I was very emotional in this book, which made me like it even more, I think, because it brought so many emotions out of me. But main character Lily ends up falling in love with a neurosurgeon, and the storyline is sweet, sad, mad, angry. I was everything. And I'm excited to read the second one. I just found out that there is a sequel to it, so Lacey has told me. So I'm excited to read the next one also.
Cynthia, you want to go next?
I really enjoyed this fast-paced book. This is definitely it covers a lot of intense themes, this book does, but I think it's really important read because it really helps to show the cycle of domestic violence and how people react differently, and there's no rhyme or reason to what's happening. This book was really, I loved all the characters in it as well. And obviously, even from like the main characters' names, like Ryle, like you rile him up and he gets upset, and Atlas being like, the map or to help Lily find direction. So I really did enjoy this book. I read It Starts With Us as well. And this was not my first Colleen Hoover book. My first one was Verity, and then this was my second one. And it was very fast paced, interesting. I loved how Lily had Ellen DeGeneres, how she was writing in her journal to Ellen DeGeneres every day. I thought that was really interesting way to let us see her thoughts and how she was feeling and her emotions about everything. So even though this does cover very difficult topics, it was a really enjoyable read.
Cool. I think I'll go next. And then Kenyatta, I think that you get to have the point of view of somebody who is thinking, should I read this book or should I go see this movie? So I will give my reaction to this. I read this, I want to say a little over a year ago after, same thing, Cynthia, I think, had recommended that I read Verity, which was very good in a very different tone than this book. And I've also read the follow-up, It Starts With Us. I think the first time I read it, I was definitely emotional. And then I listened to the Audible a couple weeks ago in preparation for this conversation. And these are some of the notes that I have. I have a lot. And this is in chronological order. In the very beginning, Ryle and Lily meet each other on the rooftop. And I was thinking, how often do people actually meet each other in real life? Like these like meet cutes that occur. And obviously when you first are introduced to Ryle's character, he's angry. I think he throws a chair or something on this rooftop, and like he doesn't even see Lily at first. And so he showed his red flags up front. And then I was thinking, do people show us their true colors and we just choose to ignore them in the beginning? And then you find out that Lily's given a eulogy for her dad, but she doesn't say anything. She's like, I'm going to say 5 great things about my dad, and then doesn't say anything because she's been angry at him for abusing her mother. And then I was thinking about how they immediately bonded because they were trauma dumping in their first interaction. And then later on, again, all these are spoilers. Lily goes to open up her own flower shop because she's been obsessed with plants forever. And she meets Elisa. And you learn later, one of the first spoiler alerts is that Elisa is Ryle's sister. And she's somebody, and you made me think about like when you do meet somebody randomly, somebody who just automatically brings light into your life. And Elisa like was that character. She was a bit of she lightened the load in terms of the heaviness, and then her husband Marshall was comedic relief. And there's this statistic that I don't know if it's true, but it says 80% of the time you when you end up with somebody for life, you met them by the time they were 18. And like Marshall and Elisa like were 17 and 18, and Marshall was Ryle's best friend. But in my notes, I have like Ryle was toxic from the beginning. He also was self-aware of it. He was 30, she was 23. So there was like a 7-year age difference. So I also think like Lily probably wouldn't have known better. Like, would she have made the same choices if she had met him when, you know, she was 30 and he was 37? And this book touches on generational trauma. The book title itself, It Ends With Us, is talking about the ending of generational trauma. Because obviously Atlas also endured abuse through his stepfather. So it can be really heavy at times. To your point, Cynthia, I think that they did a really good job finding light with her writing and her journal entries to Ellen. But it was definitely not easy to get through at times. But I really enjoyed it, and I highly recommend the book. So why don't we shift into Act Two? And Kenyatta, based on what you've heard so far from somebody who has not read this, like what are some thoughts or questions that come to mind?
So even with like going through just like the internet summary of the book, I think it should come with a big trigger warning on it.
Yeah.
I want to read it because I'm intrigued on how the story happened, how they met each other. 'Cause, you know, toxic people, they just seem to like find each other. We're like magnets for one another. And I kind of don't want to read it because I'm triggered. Like I've been through a similar situation as that, and I don't like to relive it. I don't like to hear about other women going through it. And I know that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
bad of me. I could probably be a support person for somebody else who's going through it. But that's something I'm still working through in therapy myself. So I don't know. I don't know if I want to hear about somebody else's situation and you know how bad it got and how they made it through. That's uninspiring to me. I
I
hate to
think
say that out loud. I just said that on record. Jesus, God forgive me.
I
But
don't think you should feel bad. It sounds like you're saying the truth.
I think
but
also
it,
that's sort of the point of the book is everybody processes things differently and deals with the same situation in different ways. And it's totally okay that that's your take on it.
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's gonna make a great film because I love a good lifetime type movie. It sounds very lifetime-ish. I'll put that out there, if that makes sense.
Definitely in the 90s, I would have watched this on Lifetime.
Mhm.
Michelle,
actually,
Cynthia, did you bring any questions?
no, I don't have any questions, but it just reminded me of that Lifetime movie with, I think it was Austin Green, what is his name, where he, domestic violence against his girlfriend, the Lifetime movie. I don't know if you guys saw this one.
I don't think so.
Oh.
No, but I
Oh.
do have a question. How did you feel, Cynthia and Lacey, when Lily is in Bibbs for the first time in the restaurant and she sees Atlas? Like, what were you thinking? Like, what was going through your mind when she sees Atlas for the first time?
I was excited and nervous for her, for sure.
I mean, when she was like meeting Atlas or re-meeting him again, I just wanted them to be together. And it's like the frustration about there's a quote in How I Met Your Mother that like about chemistry, and like Robin's talking to Ted, like that chemistry can be easy. It's like timing is a bitch. And I was like, no, like I just wanted them to be together, and you really didn't know what Atlas's story was, and you think he's the server, and then you find out he owns the restaurant. One of my questions is going to be like, what was your favorite revelations? And I think just what Bibbs stands for was one of
That's
my
on
favorite
mine
parts.
too. Better in Boston. Yes. Oh, I thought that was such a nice touch.
Now, Lacey, I really love that quote you just said. And have you all ever been like in a relationship with someone you feel like is the right person, but it was just y'all were together at the wrong time, so you guys got the worst in each other?
I'm going to go last on this one. Um, I mean, Cynthia's with her childhood sweetheart. So their timing worked out.
Oh,
I've
that's
definitely
amazing.
met people at the wrong time. Wrong time in my life, for sure. I'm just gonna leave it at that.
I have a part A and a part B. Part A to this is there are people that I think if I met them now that we could go the rest of our lives. That when I was with them and we had a really lovely relationship, that it ended because of, I guess, lack of maturity or I think that the person I'm thinking of, I think was going through like some mental health stuff and I lacked the maturity and I'm sure I was too. And we just didn't know how to communicate it. We didn't know what it was. There was a lack of self-awareness, a lack of social awareness that I think there are people that if I had met them now. But then the part B to that is that this is like the spiritual part of me is that, the whole everything happens for a reason, that I didn't meet
Yeah.
them at that time because I wasn't supposed to. So maybe that's a coping mechanism. I don't know.
100%. It's like how you get through, girl. It's like, oh, it wasn't meant to be. I'm not even gonna worry about it. We're not gonna stress about it. God didn't want me to have it.
Yeah, but
But
I think if there are some exes that I think of very fondly. I'm not like waiting on them to call me, beat me if you want to reach me. But I think like, oh man, that would have worked if like it was post me going to therapy. But they might not have. I don't know. Did they work through their stuff? I don't
yeah,
know.
and do you want to reinvest time in something you already invested time in? It's like roulette.
Second chance romance is the best though.
Isn't this kind of like though, like Ben Affleck and J Lo, like them getting back together 20 years later, like that wasn't the right
Yes.
time? That's
But
like a
every time,
symbol.
Yes,
every
this is
time
the
I see
perfect
him
example.
and
I'm
I
here to
see them
support it.
together, I don't know. I see. Okay, we said we're not going to talk about real people, so I'm not going to do that. No, I'm gonna say it.
Okay.
Every
Go for it.
time, every time I see them together, I think about that meme of him with the cigarette where he's just like,
I
feel like
saw
that's how you feel.
But I don't think it's about her. I think he just appreciates his privacy. It's just they have a different view. I don't know. I remember I saw her at the concert in Central Park and I can't think of the name right now. And they had not gone public on their relationship yet. And there were just the rumors. And she confirmed it for the crowd. She was like, I'm about to have this movie, like Marry Me, come out. And I will admit right now, love is on the brain. And we were all freaking out. Like I like a come back around story. I don't think that's in the cards for me. I would love a pleasant surprise, but I do like it didn't work then, but it can work now. And going back to these characters and why I do feel passionately about whether, Kenyatta, to your point, whether it's about like heavy subjects like trauma that we've been through, it's easier to live it out or talk about it when you have it through fictional characters, or it can be. And with these characters in particular, they did get that comeback around story because they met in high school and they were dealing with issues that really nobody should be dealing with, let alone like, a 15-year-old and a 17-year-old kid. And they were able to alchemize it. And I think that's a pretty beautiful thing.
So while we have a little pause, I know we addressed it off recording, but I need to say it on recording. Cynthia, the cut and the layers is given, girl. You look great with that
Oh,
haircut.
thank you.
It's very live at 5
Thank
news.
you.
It just looks good on camera.
Thank you.
Where do we want to go from here? You know, I've got a list. I always do.
Give us a question.
Let's see. Which character from the book do you relate to the most and why?
I would say for me, it would be Elisa. I really enjoyed how excited she got about everything and how like she was like, let's do it. But she was also really supportive. And I think when Lily is going through this difficult time, she's so supportive and trying to help her navigate that. So I really liked her.
Michelle, do you have a reaction?
Mm, I don't know if I related to the most, but I also enjoyed Elisa. Mostly there's one part in the story where, spoiler alert, Ryle hurts Lily for the second time or the third time maybe. And Elisa says to Lily, like, I'm telling you as your best friend, or no, she says, I'm telling you as Ryle's sister, give him another chance. But I'm telling you as my best friend, you need to leave him.
She says, I'll never talk to you again if you get back together with him.
And then it's like it's just such a raw, real emotion that she is trying to be her authentic self for Lily, and she is, and like it just makes you kind of sink into your chair while you're listening to the story, and like, oh, I was like, you go girl, you tell her, like, tell her that's a real friend, like, leave his ass. So I don't know. Yeah, I liked her character a lot.
I'm going to answer this in an astrological way. I feel like my sun is in Atlas, in that like that's who I come across as, is like somebody who had to go away and come back and like owns their own business and is like just like killing it. I feel like my moon is in Lily. Like the stories from her point of view. So you do feel her going through like uncertainty at times. And I think like internally, I don't know how often I show it externally, but internally there's this like, do you do this or do you do that? And she constantly feels like this push and pull. And I think the obvious push and pull at certain points is like how to deal with Ryle, you know, like in the very beginning, she's in a marketing role and isn't certain about starting her own business. And then my rising is in Elisa. Like that's that's who I feel most of the time. She comes across as confident and she does what she wants to do, and she's very supportive friend. So there were different times I related to everybody, and I really love that Hassan Minhaj is playing Marshall, who's like the comedic relief. Like there's a point when they go to a bar dressed up as in onesies because they give free beer. Yeah, like I look forward to seeing him in that role. And then Jenny Slate is playing Elisa. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, like as the characters are evolving, like another reason I didn't want to read the next book to this, which Cynthia, what was it called? It starts with us.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't want to read that before we discussed it because I really liked how Lily evolves at the end of the story, and she doesn't tell Ryle the whole length of the pregnancy, whether or not she wants to get divorced from him. And then they have a scene at the end, which I'm sorry, Kenyatta, another spoiler alert. She sees Atlas again pushing her baby and drops him off with Ryle because it's his weekend and runs back to find Alice. Like, I'm like envisioning that in the movie, like, and I'm like just like staring up at them, like, and I'm so ready to find out what happens in the next book. But that part of Lily, like, I'm like just cheering her on. I'm like, I'm proud of you for sticking to your guns and then like going after what you really wanted with Atlas. Like that part of Lily, like, really got me excited also.
I hope the movie is so good that we see the second movie too.
Oh, that would be fun.
What's the first book? The first book is It Ends With Us,
Yeah.
and then it starts with us.
Yeah.
Okay, I would have totally read those out of order. Okay.
Yeah.
Y'all have me really curious about this Elisa character. So I have this rule in relationships where, I don't build, you can build a bond with someone's family, like the person you're dating or your significant other. But when things go left, you always have to remember in the back of your mind that that's their family. That's not your
Yeah.
family. So with this character, I'm sorry, it's my dog. With this character saying to Lily, like, hey, this is my brother. I want y'all to work, but as a woman, as a friend, y'all gonna need to work.
Mhm.
So does Elisa stay true to her word, or does she ultimately advocates for Lily and Atlas to be together?
I think it's a bit of both. And they meet each other separately. So she meets Elisa like separately from Ryle. And the whole reason that her and Ryle get together is because they sort of because he meets her with Elisa. So I do feel like she does a little bit as he's like getting better. She's sort of like, oh, maybe you should give him another chance. But at the same time, I think she also recognizes that Lily needs to do what's best for her.
Yeah, because there were three incidents in this book, right? The first is when he burned his hand and he slapped her, and I think like she was like stunned by it. And then that's when I don't know if it was then or the second time. The second time was they were fighting or like I think she went to go down the stairs or something and he accidentally pushed her down the stairs. And then the third time was the most intense one, and that was like in their apartment.
And
But
that's
I
when they were
can't
sort of broken up, right?
which again, which
The
time?
third time.
No, they were together.
They were
She
still
Okay.
together.
they were
They were.
married.
Okay.
They were married. She came home and remember uh
She's
she
the
won that
magnet.
award of best new business, and then also Atlas's restaurant Bibs won an award that stood for better in Boston, and he was holding the magnet.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
They
yeah.
they were married, so he was mad that that Lily, he felt like Lily had lied to him. But going back to Elisa for a second and the point that you're making, Kenyatta, about how to navigate other family members, I can't remember if it was after the slap or it was after the staircase that Elisa, one of the reasons why Ryle is the way that he is because he accidentally was playing with a gun as a kid and killed their brother when he was like 6. But like thinking it was a toy gun, not knowing that it was loaded. So that's the backstory as to why he is the way that he is. And so whenever he had done one of the first transgressions, I think Elisa she just wanted Lily to know why, like what happened with Ryle. And she didn't say what she should or shouldn't do. She just wanted her to know the backstory. And then I think by the time she ended up in the hospital on the third incident, that's when, to what Michelle said, Elisa was like, if you get back together with him, I'll never speak to you again. And
She
how many
called
family
Atlas.
members would do that? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And she called Atlas, right? He came and got her and
Yes.
brought her to the hospital.
On the third time, yes, the third incident, and then Lily ends up staying with him for several days. It doesn't specify, it's less than a week, just because it was the only place she felt safe, and she memorized his number from the first time she ever saw Atlas again.
Yeah, there are a lot of Easter eggs in this, and I wanted to hear from each of you, like what Easter eggs you paid attention to or which ones stuck out to you. Because Cynthia, you even said, the names that Colleen Hoover chose, like Atlas being a map, Ryle getting him riled up. I think for Lily, it's like if in the title it ends with us, it's about like you can bloom again. Like her name is literally Lily Blossom Bloom. and it's about like I guess like even in the most difficult weather, you can still find beauty like in the next step. But were there other Easter eggs? Yeah, or growth. There are other Easter eggs that you witnessed or paid attention to?
The other thing I would say too is like how their relationship started with Ryle and Lily, and how basically he was just love bombing her all over the place, even though he was like upfront, like this would just be like a one night stand, that's it. But then
Naked truth.
yeah, but that he was pursuing her and pursuing her. Like he had like a 48-hour work day, and then he was just going door to door, knocking on all the doors to find her, and just I feel like it's like a little bit of crazy or chaoticness with him.
He also took a picture of her right before
Oh
they
yeah.
left. And then for her birthday party, they go to the apartment and he had blown up
6
the
months,
picture of
8
her.
months later.
Like a woman he met one time, he framed a photo of her. And it's just,
He's just waving these red flags right in her face.
Ooh,
but
yeah.
this is why I'm saying her being 23. And I guess a question that makes me think more about like us doing introspection from our real lives is like, would we have known at 23 those kind of red flags? Like some people I don't think in their 30s recognize those red flags.
I
No,
think
and to
we
your
have.
point,
Oh,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think we have a trauma upbringing, like it seems like Lily had. Like any signs of love, whether it be a red flag or a green flag, it's you desire it so much. Like you just the desire overpowers your rational thinking.
I was just going
Like,
to say, I
oh,
think
it's
it's
so sweet.
interesting too that she, she experienced the cycles of abuse already. And I think even though she experienced that, she still had difficulty seeing it in her own life because we are sort of blinded, right? She's
Yeah.
literally blinded by love bombing, right? Like she's like, wow, he really wants me. He's really into me. And so that's why it was so difficult for her to see, even after the
Yeah,
first time.
right. And to that point, it's also so the love bombing aspect of that, but you don't want to believe it. You want to believe at 23 that you see the best in someone. And I think it was after the second incident where he said, "No, you fell down the stairs. You fell down the stairs." He couldn't he wasn't allowing himself to say, "I pushed you down the stairs." And I think almost for anybody that's ever been in any situation, maybe like for somebody to not admit it and to lie about it, that's where you fully lose trust in someone because they don't even have the courage or the balls to say they did something. And then it's like, oh, I don't know, I got angry at that part. Like, because he's lying, he's manipulating her mind into thinking she fell down the stairs.
He
Yeah.
wasn't
And you
taking
also,
responsibility.
right. And all of
Mhm.
this also makes you a little bit frustrated with Lily because in theory, she knew better. She does do this comparison about how her dad, like her dad never showed her mom like the kind of love that Ryle showed her, and that abuse also looks different in different situations and different dynamics. So she was very accustomed to her father's patterns. And then yeah, like you said, Cynthia was just completely blinded to it. But there were points when I was reading it and I'm like, don't go back. Like I'm like, go choose Atlas. Like,
But how
but it's
many
not that
times
cut and
would we
dry.
also, yeah, but how many times would we also, like in her similar situation, probably done the same thing, right? It's, I don't think we can say like, it's really her fault. She really was
No.
not aware. Like she was just so blinded. And she also, I think she was, as Michelle was saying, was looking at the best in him, right? She was
Yeah.
seeing like what she loved about him, not the negative.
So Kenyatta, on their first interaction, Ryle, the guy who is the abuser in the story, one of them, he says a line to her, I believe, "People aren't bad, people just do bad things." So I think that they keep that kind of going in the storyline.
Okay.
That's definitely a theme throughout the whole book.
Mhm, mhm.
I also want to be clear. I never at any point blamed her. And I think these are mutually exclusive. I was still mad at her though. You can think something's
Yeah.
not somebody's fault and still want them to make different decisions. Like, and I think we experience that when we see any of our loved ones making choices that we wouldn't make. It doesn't have to be to that degree that you're like, it's not my responsibility. Like I need to be there as a support system. And but I think you can still harbor that emotion while also realizing it's not their fault.
100%. And to anybody else who's deciding on listening or reading the book, a little bit further in depth, the backstory with Atlas is a childhood friend of Lily. They meet because he gets abused as a kid, not in full detail as it's not explained, but so they have a bond over that because she sees her abuse in the father and the mother. And then fast forward when Atlas finally sees her as an adult with Ryle, he can see that she has bruises. And so he's like, what are you doing? Like, why would you be with somebody when you know what trauma and abuse looks like? And so a lot of ups and downs in the story.
So I have a controversial question, not a controversial, but maybe a existential one. Can people change? Like if that
100%.
if Ryle were in real life, do you think Ryle could change? Or
Is he in
people like
therapy?
him? He said he'd been in therapy his whole life in the book, since he was a
He
kid.
did. You're right. He did say that. But that's probably why he forewarned her that he couldn't be in relationships. So he had never tried to expose himself to love and nurture. And he probably knew somehow deep down inside that he couldn't be good for somebody. So he tried to stay away from it. But do I think in real life he didn't prove in the storyline that he could change? But I haven't read the second book yet.
I don't think that Ryle and Lily can be together again. That doesn't mean that people in real life can't change, but
yeah,
I
my
think in this
question's
situation-
more about, can people in real life change? I agree with you. When she said at the end, like, Ryle, I want a divorce after her daughter was born, like it was the most like liberating part of the story. But Cynthia Cañetta, real life, can people change?
I would say yes. I think people can change. I think people mature and they work through all their issues and they figure out what is causing them grief and triggers and all of those things. Like I do think people can change, but I also think though that doesn't mean that they should go back to whatever situation they were in, because that doesn't mean the other person has changed, or it doesn't mean that their situation has changed, if that makes sense.
100%.
So off of that, do I think people can change? Yes, in a sense. People change when their situation change. So if you want to be a changed person, you have to change your situation. So you cannot be a changed person and as Ryle can't be a changed person and still be with Lily. He could be it for another woman, but he cannot be that for her. Because I personally believe that version of ourselves that we want to change still lives inside of us. We have to make a conscious effort to not be that person every day. So change is hard work, and you have to change your circumstances to change who you are.
That's an interesting way of looking at it. I had a coach in a work setting, and one time I was saying something like, I was like making a joke out of it and being like, sometimes I feel like all of the different 7 dwarfs in the body of Snow White. And he's like, well, who's in charge most of the time? And I was like, well, usually it's Doc. Like my logical brain is what leads me through everything. He's like, well, who do you want to be in charge? And I was like, well, Happy, obviously. And so I think that you have an interesting hypothesis that we all are multifaceted beings and have multiple versions of ourselves. We have to realize what are all of those versions, and to your point, consciously choose that upgraded version or that evolved version, and that there can be shadow parts of you that could come out depending on the people or the environment, and you have to make the right choices to not fall backwards.
I think if this was Lily and Ryle in real life, Ryle could change because Lily made that decision for him that they needed a divorce, and the circumstances that he put them in, that she put them in, her asking for the divorce is doing him a favor. So yes, I think in real life he can change because speaking from experience, I've seen people change in certain situations. So if somebody can, I'm trying to say it without saying it, but I think people could change. If it was real life and people are put in a certain situation where they realize then what had happened or the circumstances or the extent of the circumstances in this situation was abuse, Ryle changed in real life.
And to go back to what you said, Michelle, I think too that the other person would have to take full responsibility and there would have to be ownership moving forward too, if it was actually going to change and people were going to accept this situation in the change and not just be forced.
Right.
There's a prompt in dating apps that says like the world would be a better place with what? And my thought when I read that was accountability coupled with forgiveness, like for legitimate change behavior. Because I think that we talk a lot about different pendulum swings when we talk about different concepts in these podcasts. And I think that there's been this era of accountability in the last, let's post Me Too movement, that accountability is there. And then we don't really have a rule book for evidence of change behavior. And then what does forgiveness look like? It's mostly been like, that's when you get into cancel culture, which is easier, right? Just to be like, block, never talk to me again, you're canceled.
It is easier.
But if we look at like what's the statistic? 1 in 3 women have undergone some sort of, I'm just going to bucket it as trauma right now. Then if you look at it that way and say that's a different guy, how many times is it a net new? We can't put them all on an island. Can let them all live together. So it's like, I'm not trying to solve anything at that sort of mass scale, but yeah, I wrestle with these ideas and with these concepts. And I think that you made a good point, Cynthia, that it's like the behavior has to be changed. And then like forgiveness has to be embedded at some point, not to be excused or justified or forgotten.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, to your point, they don't forgive because the accountability is not there. It's like, I need you to acknowledge what happened.
Yeah.
I need you to understand that you did this. And most abusers, the first thing they say is, no, it didn't. Just like, I guess, with Ryle, I didn't push you down the stairs. I didn't hit you.
Fell.
Yeah, I didn't do that.
You made
Or
me
no,
do
it was an accident.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or you pushed me there. You made me do it.
You made me do it.
You hit me first. You raised your voice at me. Like,
maybe we should pause and appreciate like the Atlases of the world. And unfortunately, Atlas went through it himself.
He's definitely the other side.
And he also broke his cycle so far. Like he was trying to break the own cycle in his life. So he left his mom's house.
Breaking cycles is not easy.
At all. Because it's comfortable in the cycle. That is your norm. That is your comfort space.
It's not that bad. Isn't that what people say?
I've survived it. I know how to survive this. I don't know how to survive not being this way. Like this is new.
Well, that's Lily's mother, right? She
I
was
was just about
comfortable
to
in
say.
it.
Yes.
Yeah.
She learned to deal with it. She had her own coping mechanisms. That's why
What's
she was
that
so
phrase?
upset with Lily.
The devil
I
you
was
know.
so worried that the mom wasn't going to respond the way she did. I was so glad she responded to Lily in the storyline how she did. I was worried she was going to be like an old school mom, like, just stick with it. It's not that bad. Just stick with it, you know?
Oh, that's what men do.
Oh, well, we've definitely paused to reflect the difficult nature of this. And I think that we definitely need to put a trigger warning at the top of this episode to as a fair call out, Kenyatta, because I think you came into this not knowing what this book was about. We probably should have given you that warning. When it comes to changing behavior and when it comes to breaking generational curses, what's worked for each of you? Like, what advice would you give to other people?
Therapy, therapy, therapy.
Raise your hand if you have a therapist.
Literally for 15 years. So
Well,
Okay.
hey, I'm new to it. It's 2024, y'all. It's the first time I've had therapy, and moving forward, I think, please, y'all, just give it a chance. There's no stigma out there.
It's just as common as going to the gym.
It
it
really
doesn't
is.
matter what your family thinks about it.
It is the gym for your mind.
If you
What
just sit
other
there and talk,
advice?
for me, I would say, don't be afraid of isolation, because it's very hard to progress when you're surrounded by people who are A, not progressing, B, do not understand your progression or see the vision to where you want to go, and C, Lord, I don't want to use the word jealous, but like sometimes people get jealous of your progression because they don't know how to start. And when you're on a journey to break a generational curse or to progress your life, it's really not the time for you to mentor other people. Sometimes you have to be selfish and go into isolation. And I know a lot of people don't understand that. They take it as you being iffy. Sometimes they mask it as bougie, standoffish, stuck up. Let them label you whatever they need to label you for you to do what needs to be done, family included. So
Mm-hmm.
isolation is necessary sometimes.
I like that. Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong. I think it's mislabeled, the whole selfish thing. But to follow up with that, Kenyatta, I think get comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I would also add to that too, is to ask yourself what is going to make you happy or what is going to make your life better, and not worry about necessarily. I mean, obviously we want to be considerate of other people, but also to be sure of and be true to ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, I created a course a few years ago that was touching on from self-sabotage to self-transformation. And I wonder how different that would be if I did it now. And I don't have all of it memorized, but I think self-awareness is the first step. Because even how you're talking about accountability, like accountability starts with self-accountability. And I remember I think I've talked to each of you about this. If this were something physical, right? Like I remember when I would talk about PCOS or endometriosis, I would always be like, I struggle with it. I struggle with it. Right. Like what if I had just ignored it and I didn't even have words to talk about it? So if I was like dealing with something, first you're ignoring it, then maybe you're struggling with it when you're in therapy. And then I would say over the time I've been in therapy, the word struggle, and even the way I was talking about PCOS endometriosis, I would start saying I'm navigating it. And then it was just about 6 months ago, I was talking to my therapist and she was like, do you think you could ever embrace it? And it's like getting to that place of acceptance. And so I think, and not that it needs to be self-sabotage per se or change behavior or breaking generational curses. That's what it could feel like. Are you even conscious of it? Are you ignoring it? Or how are you dealing with it? And sometimes it can feel like a struggle. Eventually you get the tools to navigate it. And then hopefully you get to a place where you can embrace it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot.
I feel like that
I
was
look
our truth or dare today.
Right.
No, we're still gonna play. That was the advice. I think that we still have to action and hold each other accountable ourselves. Are you trying to get out of it, Cynthia?
Mine would
No.
probably be just a truth today anyway. So
Yeah. Anything else we haven't talked about in the book?
It's a damn good book. I liked it.
I look
her
forward to
stories
seeing.
are really enticing.
They
Yeah.
are. They are. Michelle and I were doing a road trip from Seattle down to San Diego, and I read two of her books, like, and one of them cover to cover. I think I have both of them. November 9th. And oh, I can't see what the other one is because I mean I like to give books away whenever I'm done with them, and there's a like local birdhouse library, and I definitely put both of these books, It Ends With Us and It Starts With Us. So Michelle, I look forward to seeing what you think about It Starts With Us, but I inhale all of her books, and I know multiple friends who do.
I'm hoping that there's a second movie on It Starts With Us, so we could do that one as well.
Unlike Something Borrowed and Something Blue, I really wanted them to do a Something Blue with Kate Hudson and John Krasinski, and they never did. So
Krasinski.
okay, well let's close out with Truth or Dare, even if it's like repeating concepts that we've already done. Anybody want to kick it off?
I'll dare myself to listen to this book.
Okay.
I'm gonna give it a shot. Like, you guys have convinced me. Like, and then this author, I always hear her name. I always hear her name, but I've not indulged in her fiction yet. So I'll give her a shot too.
I think people love her or hate her.
We'll see.
Kenyatta will tell us how she really feels.
So I think I'm gonna go with Dare. Lily, at the end of the story, I just felt like she was liberated, or at least that's what I took away from it. Like her running back to Atlas, and like I'm just projecting what I think the story's gonna be in my mind, what I want it to be. But I'm gonna dare myself to go after what I want, whatever. I don't know what that looks like right now in the moment, but just try to make myself happy.
I guess I will go next. And I think I'm going to do a prayer, because I just hearing what you were talking about, Michelle, and I was just thinking about how Lily took a leap of faith when she started her
You're
floral
listening
shop.
to Truth or
And
Dare to Share.
I think I want
by
to
Ambitiously Intuitive.
I'm sort of on this journey already. And so I just want to continue on with trying to, I guess, harness what I see for the future and just reconcile how I'm going to get there.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, listening to you, Kenyatta, in terms of like reading this book, I've just gotten back into like a reading groove. I had like a 2-month drought. So I do hope that that you find enjoyment in it. I've read it twice, and I expect you will, but never know. And then Michelle and Cynthia, I like the idea of like following your heart and going outside of your comfort zone. I didn't have mine decided until like the last, I would say, like 60 seconds or so. And I'm coming back to a callback from the book that you said, Michelle, which is, Ryle points out that there are no such things as bad people, only like people who do bad things. I have a tendency to issue trust to people and then take it away later, which I don't think I'm going to like change that model. I am going to dare myself to pay attention more to the signs. I think I wait for like some big event to happen to then remove trust or change the relationship. And I think that one thing that was pretty obvious in these books is like people show you who they are, and they show it pretty early on. And so it's just trying to remain objective. Like I do think most people are good, but I think that you do have to pay attention to the signs a little bit more. And so I'm going to dare myself to be a bit more mindful of that.
What's the saying? When someone shows you who they are, believe them.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other closing thoughts on It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover?
Let us know your thoughts.
Cool. Well, thank you for joining us for this episode. Appreciate the support. Give us any feedback, like, follow, share, and see you later.
Bye.
Bye.
You're listening to Truth or Dare to Share by Ambitiously Intuitive.